In the book of John, chapter 20, verse 13, we find the following verse. "They have taken away my Lord," she said, "and I do not know where they have put him," which is almost identical to the allegorical grief of Isis or isililo sikaNomkhubulwane, or in the Greek version, the grief of Aphrodite, whom her husband is gored by a wild boar in a hunting expedition. In that version, Adonis is wounded or is stabbed by a wild boar the same way uJesu naye is poked on the side on the cross. This is the same story. In the Kemet version now, we are told Isis or Usisi goes around wailing, as does Mary, who is crying because when she gets to her husband's tomb, she finds it open. And now she cries because she doesn't know where they have taken him. The husband has risen. This now puts us on the 25th of June when the sun takes its first degree out of the winter solstice. Every year, our son, Adonis, Umvelinqangi, Thomas, or Usomdidi, Tammuz, or Udamuzi ngesintu, Umvelinqangi, is said to hide himself at the winter solstice. This is why now in the Kemetic religions, we have the annual religious observance of seeking for Osiris, and the countless expressions which run through Christian theology borrowed from astro-theology. These tales, guys, they come from astro-theology. There's nothing represented in these scriptures that actually represents people that once lived in a specific location in the Middle East or wherever you want to put it. Again, in the same verse, we find the following. Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Utamuzi, like Udimuzi that I just said, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my fingers where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." You see, for 4 days before and after the winter solstice, the sun is said to be at its lowest point of declination. Is it not interesting that June 16, the celebration of youth, is actually put here at these days which are said to be 4 days before the winter solstice and 4 days after? This, of course, now represents the sun at its lowest declination or its lowest point. The winter solstice, the 21st of June, is said to be the middle day of the winter solstice. This is where now doubting Thomas, Usomdidi, Udimuzi, becomes or is the prodigy of that day and is then in a metaphorical despair as to whether his Lord will ever rise again. But on the 25th of June, it does become apparent that the Lord has risen, and with each passing day, it brings more and more daylight. The sun, of course, achieving his first degree in the ascending scale, we call the day, the 25th now, the birth of Christ, Lazarus, or the resurrection of our year. So now, doubting Thomas is actually saying, if this is an allegory about the sun for real, he's actually saying, don't talk to me about seeing the sun, because my fingers are still frostbitten still, until I can warm them in his vital heat and put my hand upon something that he has made warm. These are now the produces that are going to be coming in the coming months. Made warm by the ripening of days, I will not believe. So he's basically saying, yes, but I am still cold. Kusabanda. I look around me and all I see is death. I will not believe until I start seeing the first greenery, the first shoots that will come from the ground, that will truly say to us, yes, the sun has been resurrected. Oh yes, our Lord lives again. This is also allegorized in the trilogy of the books called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I can't remember who is written. If you remember in that first one, they were all anticipating the return of Aslan, the return of the lion. That lion represents the sun. Aslan is the sun. We are looking at the same story. Now, to move on a bit. The verse does make it a point to mention that the disciples started seeing Jesus only after 8 days. And why is this? Because the Jews, they keep a ceremony of circumcision specifically without fail 8 days after the son or the child is born. Why is this? Well, it's because the increase of the sun's vital heat, it only becomes perceptible only after 8 days. It is only after 8 days that Thomas receives the gratification that he demands. And it is only after 8 days, counting now from the 25th of June, we come to the 2nd of July. If you flip the script over now, this would be the 1st of January, the start of the new year. For us in the Southern Hemisphere, the 8th day count places us on the 2nd of July and not 1 day before that. Then the augmentation of daylight, the perceptible increase of the sun's heat becomes noticeable. It is only from the 2nd of July. If we're in December and we're in the north, it is only at the 1st of January that we can truly perceive through sense that, oh yes, actually, the sun has indeed begun his upward march. That is where it begins. That is where it begins. This is where these stories come from. You can keep it as the most sacred law in your rituals or in your rites of passages or whatever you want to call it. But it all comes from observing the sun. Singabalandeli belanga, whether we know it or not. Now, ngesintu, we have our own version of a bar mitzvah. And I want to align it to this 8-day count. But ngesintu, it's not something that's taken as literal as the Jews do it, where the first 8 days when a child is born, they literally perform the circumcision. Now, around the winter solstice, if you look east in the morning before sunrise, you will see the star cluster, Isilimela. Now, part of this Isilimela falls under the constellation Taurus, the heavenly bull, Jehovah Bubele, Nkulunkulu Namabele. The constellations, in any time we need to deal with agriculture, farming, abundance, that constellation appears either in the morning or in the evening. So around the solstice in June, the appearing of that particular star cluster now, Isilimela, ngesintu, it tells us firstly to get our hoes ready because the planting season is about to begin. And depending on how bright or how dim the star cluster is, that can actually tell us concerning the state of frost, whether it's going to be early or it's going to be late, which determines when this planting season actually starts. The other thing that it does determine or tell us in the Southern Hemisphere is that we need to get our boys ready to go to the mountains for initiation. Yes, the appearing of Isilimela tells us to do the bar mitzvah for abantwana bethu, which is something we do collectively. When does this start happening? Around the time the sun is reborn, and as it's going from strength to strength, our boys go into the mountain. Of which when they come back from this exercise, they come back clad in white, representing the vernix caseosa that you would see on a newborn baby, that white, oily substance that you would see on a newborn baby, like I've just shown in this picture. So that would be our version of a bar mitzvah. We follow the sun, guys, whether we like it or not. We follow the sun. You may cry about it. You may call it demonic. You can do whatever you want. But the fact of the matter is we all follow the sun. There is not a religious observance or a cultural observance. Because I understand now some among us, they say, no, there's a difference between spirituality and religion. It doesn't matter. Any of these rites and rituals that you follow, whether it be in religion, whether it be in spirituality, it all comes from the sun. It all comes from observing the sun.